Next on my trek through the lowest rated movies on IMDb, we come to number 24, 2019's Cats. Wow, I must be the first person on the internet to talk about how bad this movie is. Okay, I'm probably the first one in a long time, because nobody cares anymore. Why couldn't I have come across this in 2020 or something? Yes, ever since that instantly infamous first trailer, this movie became the internet's favorite punching bag for some time. I've even took part in it myself with my own video making fun of it. I've always hated that video since I released it. It's just a bunch of obvious jokes and cheap shots, but it still became one of my most popular videos at the time, so I left it up for a long while. I took it down a few years after the hype around how bad the movie is has died down, but it might be back up now. Maybe. Depends on when you watch this video. Remind me to take this part out before I post this video. And now it's finally coming full circle, but that means I have to actually watch it now. But anyway, what can I say about it that hasn't already been said? I don't know, but I gotta say something. Honestly, that part may be shorter than the background section of this video, especially since I'll be giving some background about the source material too, so I guess be patient or something. The story of Cats, this 2019 movie, began in 1939, when poet T.S. Eliot published Old Possum's book of Practical Cats, which consisted of a series of poems about cats. This book had become a childhood favorite of British musical playwright Andrew Lloyd Webber, and in 1977 he started a songwriting exercise where he set those poems to music. He initially only wanted to show them to his friends, but after one of his song cycles, called Tell Me on a Sunday, was televised by the BBC, he decided he might want to make these songs into a show as well. It started out not as an actual musical, but as a song cycle called Practical Cats that was played at the 1980 Sydmonton Festival. One person who was in attendance was Eliot's widow, Valerie, and she liked it so much that she showed Webber some unpublished poems from her husband that were also about cats, including one called Grisabella the Glamour Cat, which was left out of the book out of fear that it would be too depressing for children. But that was the one that convinced Webber that there was more to his Practical Cats idea, enough to make it into a full-blown musical. He got Trevor Nunn, who was then the artistic director for the Royal Shakespeare Company, to direct this play. This was an unusual choice since musical theater was considered too lowbrow for somebody from a Shakespearean background, but the producers got him because they thought they'd need somebody of his stature to get the approval from Valerie Elliott. Nunn envisioned it as a chamber piece with 5 actors and 2 pianos, but Webber eventually convinced him to go for his own bigger, more ambitious vision. One of Nunn's conditions for directing was that Judi Dench be cast, which the rest of the crew were more than happy to get somebody of his status on board, and she was cast in 2 roles, Grisabella and Jenny Ann Nedots. But Nunn decided that to be successful, it needed to have some kind of narrative, so he did some rewrites. In one of Eliot's poems, he mentions something called the Jellicle Ball, and in an unpublished one, he mentions a cat version of heaven called the Heaviside Layer. Nunn expanded on these concepts, making the Jellicle Ball into a place where they choose one cat to ascend to the Heaviside Layer, thus giving the characters a reason to join together and sing about themselves. However, they struggled to get the money for the theater in London's West End because so many investors looked at the concept and thought, what the hell is this? Webber put out a second mortgage on his home to pay for it, and later said that if the show bombed, he would have been left in financial ruin. The rest of the money was given by small investments from a little over 200 people through newspaper ads. Spoiler, the rate of return on those investments was estimated to be over 3,500%. The advertising company D. Winters was tasked with coming up with an official poster for the movie. They eventually came up with that one iconic image, a minimalist poster that would prove to be highly influential in the field of musical advertising by introducing the idea of just focusing on one powerful image. The only issue is that the title of Practical Cats was believed to be out of place in this image, so it was shortened to just Cats. There, so everything's set up. Tickets have just gone on sale and it's set to play in just a few months. Everything's great, except for just one thing. Yeah, the script isn't finished yet, and Webber's having trouble writing it. Many of the characters were developed simply by having the actors improvise with each other, and the lyrics to memory weren't even completed until well into the previews. Also, Judi Dench had to drop out after spraining her ankle, and music director Chris Walker had to drop out for medical reasons. The opening day was pushed back, but the crew insisted that the preview start at the same date to avoid contributing to rumors that everything wasn't going completely fine on set. Well, despite everything, when it opened in 1981, it was a smash hit. It also received rave reviews from critics, with many calling it a significant moment in theater history. Peter Heppel wrote for the stage that the British musical had taken a giant leap forward, surpassing in ingenuity and invention anything that Broadway has sent us. I bring that up because when it actually got to Broadway, that's when things got more mixed, with many complaining about the lack of story and calling it style over substance. Despite that, it became a phenomenon that made Webber into a household name. It ran for 21 years, making it the longest-running musical in history until it was beaten by The Phantom of the Opera. It is credited with popularizing the mega musical or flashier musicals made with a much larger scale in mind. It also created several methods for lighting and audio, which are frequently used today. Without exaggerating, it changed musical theater forever. So of course Hollywood was interested. Plans started as early as the 1990s with an animated adaptation to be done by Steven Spielberg's Amblination. Those plans were abandoned after the studio closed. And instead, somebody made a straight-to-video movie adaptation in 1998, which was basically just a performance of the show. Which, I haven't seen anything since Cats, but if what I hear is true, that may be the best way to make a movie about something like this, where so much of the appeal lies in the fact that it's a stage show, like that Hamilton movie. So therefore, nobody ever touched that property again. Until 2013, when Webber revealed that Universal Pictures bought the rights a long time ago, and were now actively trying to get it off the ground. In 2016, they had a confirmed director, Tom Hooper, Oscar-winning director of The King's Speech, Les Miserables, and The Danish Girl. He also wrote the screenplay along with Lee Hall, who worked on Billy Elliot, War Horse, and Rocketman. Due to the Amblination connection, Spielberg was credited as an executive producer. You know I was disappointed to see the Amblin logo before this. Anne Hathaway and Hugh Jackman were both offered roles. They both turned them down. But they still got an all-star cast that screamed, "We have Oscar ambitions here," including Judi Dench. After all these years, he finally got to be in Cats. Why did it have to be this one, though? She plays Old Deuteronomy, a role which is traditionally male but was gender swapped just for her. Oh no, it's woke. See, that's why it's bad. That's the only possible reason. As well as a new star in what could probably come closest to being the lead role, ballerina Francesca Hayward. How nice of them to elevate such unknown talent. Somebody go check on her and make sure she's okay. Universal Pictures had two ideas for it to greenlight and release in December of 2019. This, or an adaptation of Wicked. Great choice, guys. To prepare, the actors were sent to what was referred to as cat school to learn to move like a cat, where they reportedly spent hours crawling while barefoot and hissing at each other. Andrew Lloyd Webber and Taylor Swift also wrote a new song for this movie called Beautiful Ghosts. Despite this small involvement, Webber would later say that a lot of why this movie was so bad was because Tom Hooper refused to allow any other involvement from anybody involved in the play. He also reportedly wrote to the head of Universal saying, quote, "You got a car crash on your hands unless you get a grip on this thing." He never got a response back. Tom Hooper originally intended to use makeup and costumes to create the cats due to the high cost of CGI. See, we were this close. But he was unsatisfied with the results, saying that he had put full face prosthetics on the actors, which he felt obscured their emotional acting. So he did the logical thing and settled for CGI monstrosities, which were made in an unhealthy environment. A VFX worker claimed that they had to work 80 to 90-hour weeks to complete them on time, and Hooper would insult individual workers through email and in press conferences. He also caused some problems with his rejection of the VFX workflow. Usually a partially rendered image is sent so that the director can approve the movement of the character before fur and finer details are added, but Hooper insisted that he only view the final renders, which unnecessarily cost them a lot of time and money. He also insisted that the movements of real cats be used for each movement of the characters. Somebody then had to point out that was physically impossible because, quote, "cats don't dance." And of course, there's the infamous, rumored butthole cut. When the movie was all done, one worker told the media that the characters had visible buttholes and they had to edit them out. Another one said that it just looked that way with some of the fur effects. That last one's probably most likely. Either way, it definitely got the people's attention when it came out. The public got their first look at it at that year's CinemaCon, where Jennifer Hudson performed her version of Memory, which was followed by a behind-the-scenes look with the cast and crew. Looking good so far. The next week they released a featurette, which also showed promise. I didn't see it when it came out, but looking at it now, I could see myself watching it and thinking that this would be something truly great. It showcases the cast and the amazing set design, but most of all, looking at it now, there's a sense of innocence and naivete to it. They all seem to love the show and believe that they've created something amazing. I presume the cast didn't see how they'd look yet.
When I first heard I was going to be in Cats, instantly I felt the pressure.
This musical is timeless.
I just remember loving it. So when Cats became a movie, obviously I jumped at the chance.
At the center of this incredibly entertaining, comedic, fantastical musical is a very timely story about the importance of inclusion and redemption.
I think it just speaks really powerfully to everyone. There are so many emotions.
Tom's pairing them with a kind of level of technology which I don't think has ever been used before.
We've used digital fur technology to create the most perfect covering of fur.
These are people, but they're cats, and this is kind of blowing my mind.
I just was like really excited and so honored to get to be a part of this.
This film is an event.
Trailer Friday. Can't wait to see how it looks.
And we got to update it in ways that I think are just so great.
So it was almost unanimously hated immediately, which I guess makes it a little more entertaining watching the later trailers with how out of touch they are with public perception as they double down on trying to pass this off as a feel-good spectacle, or in their words, the most joyful event of the holiday season. Seriously, even the new Animal Farm seemed to know that everybody hated it after they saw the trailer. But apparently that trailer took the VFX department 6 months to make. And now they had 4 months to do the rest of the 110-minute film. They completed the effects only hours before the premiere, and even then they weren't fully complete. More on that later. Okay, but now let's get on to the review. What can I say about it that hasn't already been done to death? Oh wow, did you know that everybody looks creepy? Did you know there's no story? How about James Corden not being the high point? I guess I'll start by giving it this. Everything except for the cats looks great. The set design looks amazing. At times the scale can be a little inconsistent, but for the most part it shows the world from the point of view of a cat in beautiful detail. It takes place in a world that is too good looking for such terrible looking characters. And these cats do indeed look terrible. The typical go-to example of the uncanny valley.
Remember that animation style where everything looked real but nothing looked right?
Also, in Rebel Wilson's big song, we see singing and dancing mice and cockroaches done in the same way. It isn't much better for them. Which brings me to the decision to not use practical effects. Obviously I wasn't there, I haven't seen the costumes or whatever, but they were rejected because Tom Hooper didn't like how they look with full facial prosthetics, so I just gotta ask, why did they need full facial prosthetics? The people in the show don't appear to have them. I mean, there may or may not be some stuff there, but you can clearly see their faces and their expressions. Could you really not make it look like that? That way the movie would look good and those VFX workers wouldn't have to suffer so much. I'm not sure what those prosthetics Hooper had in mind look like, but I wouldn't be surprised if they weren't much less disturbing than the final product, given his ambitions. His wildly bad, out of touch with reality ambitions. With Les Miserables, he made the controversial choice to have all the actors actually sing their music rather than having some of them lip sync to actual singers. Even in his more normal movies, some film snobs have nitpicked some bizarre choices in cinematography. Well, this movie is just what all of those things were leading up to.
I think it could really only be done by a director like Tom Hooper.
Also, why would you use full prosthetics to make the faces look less human and then go straight to CGI that makes them look fully human? But seeing how nightmarish the cats look can only distract from how great the choreography is. These musical numbers look great. Or they would if they didn't look horrifying. And it was smart of them to make it so that the first thing people saw of it was Jennifer Hudson's version of Memory, because that was by far the best part of this movie, even in that infamous trailer. It took a few watches for me to notice. Yes, I've seen it more than once. A lot more than once. But the point is, one time I saw it, I realized, wait, this is a great song. Jason Derulo is also a surprise show stealer. He does a very energetic performance of his song. Rebel Wilson and James Corden are also there and interrupt some of the songs for some comic relief that's more just annoying than anything, including this one.
And just before noon's not a moment too soon. Right, well, that's not going to work, is it? Okay? Look at you and look at me, and you know that I'm sensitive about my size. I'm remarkably fat.
Taylor Swift also wasn't bad, although she isn't as memorable as she could be. Her fans may be disappointed that she's only in it for a short time, although I guess that's true of most people here. The issue is that most of the cast takes center stage to sing a song that establishes their character. She comes on to sing a song that establishes somebody else's character. Which brings me to the story. Yeah, like the play it's based on, it doesn't have one. The vast majority of it is just cats introducing themselves, which is apparently a big part of why the play was so divisive, but okay, I never saw it, but people have said that it gets by with that lack of plot through its immersive live atmosphere, which is apparently why it doesn't translate well to film where it loses that immersion. But I'll admit I was still kind of entertained by it for the first hour. I mean, not overly entertained, mostly due to the horrendous nightmare creatures on screen, but interested enough to not be completely miserable. Early on this channel I said that I'm not much into musicals. I think that might be kind of growing on me now. It's not slow, it just has a different narrative than usual. The different kinds of cats and locations keep it from being too repetitive, but only for so long. At around the hour mark I was finally starting to think, okay, now this is getting old. Now it actually is repetitive, and slow, and boring, and full of horrendous nightmare creatures. I'll also say that if not for the horrendous nightmare creatures, this would probably still be seen as on the same level as Les Miserables. I'm sure the Swifties would have defended it. Hell, it might even get a few Oscar nominations. Same as Les Miserables, where it gets some minor award buzz, but nobody really likes it. I don't remember much of that movie, but I remember being kind of bored with it, so I guess that would put it on the same level of this new hypothetical version of Cats. It would be divisive, but divisive in the same way that the show was. People may say it worked better as a stage production, but it would still have its fans. Everybody like me who doesn't know shit about Cats would probably just consider it an ambitious misfire. Even its more bizarre aspects might inspire whimsy if they didn't inspire fear. Some people would ask, did Rebel Wilson just unzip her fur and now she has a vest underneath it with more fur underneath that? And everybody else would respond with, why do you hate fun? But we got this version instead, so now it's an infamous moment in film musical history. Although I will say that it did convince me that this is probably a really fun musical. There's possibly even a great spectacle of a movie buried here. I can enjoy a movie that's more interested in vibes over story. The only problem is that this movie obviously gives off bad vibes. So, to nobody's surprise, the movie opened to overwhelmingly negative reviews, with many calling it one of the worst movies ever made. Andrew Lloyd Webber hated it so much he adopted a dog.
To recover from the trauma of the Cats movie?
It was, yes. I mean, it's my therapy dog on planes. I just write a note to the airlines saying, reason for dog on plane, and just put Cats movie, and they always come back saying, no doctor certificate required. So,
what was it that you didn't like about Cats the movie?
Well, is this a very, very long interview we're doing? Because it could be a very, very long list.
It premiered in December of 2019, the same weekend as Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, as Universal meant for it to serve as counter-programming to that movie for the younger female audience. Clearly, they'd be swarming to this. It was initially projected to make $15 to $20 million on opening weekend, but when it only made $2.6 million on day one, those numbers dropped to $8 million. It instead made $6.5 million. Also, due to how rushed the visual effects artists were, there were several major issues with the CGI at times. Most famously a scene where Judi Dench's human hand is visible, complete with a wedding ring. And so, less than a week after release, Universal put out a new version of this movie with updated special effects and encouraged theaters to replace the movie as soon as possible. A move that was previously unheard of. I'm sure that'll save the movie. Honestly, even this new version kinda misses some shots. It was at around this point when Universal finally took it off their 4-year consideration campaigns. Oh really? Although it was there long enough for that one song that was written for this movie to get nominated for a Golden Globe and a Grammy, so there's that. At the end of its run, it made $78 million on a budget of $95 million on top of a $115 million global advertising campaign. Honestly, the fact that Wicked was greenlit at all after this is kind of a miracle. Even some of its stars tried to distance themselves from it, including James Corden, who said in interviews that he hasn't seen it, but he's heard it's terrible. Also, he and Rebel Wilson presented at the Oscars dressed as their respective characters, where they said,
"As cast members of the motion picture Cats,
nobody more than us understands the importance of good visual effects."
Which, in a vacuum, may seem like one of the few times James Corden was funny and likable, but many of the exploited VFX workers found it to be in poor taste. Many of whom were laid off after the effects company closed after production. And I guess, in the context of this movie, yeah, it might not have been the best way to go about things. Wait, are we all complicit in this for collectively making fun of these effects? Whatever, the real bad guy in the effects department was Hooper, and this movie really messed up his reputation. He started the 2010s with an Oscar for Best Picture, and ended it with a Razzie for Worst Picture that was so hated many people started to wonder if his Oscar movie was even that good. As I'm writing this, the first thing that IMDB says that this Oscar-winning director is known for is Cats. And with how he acted, I can't feel bad for him. But did this end his career? Well, he has taken a long break from film to focus on commercials and one remaster of Les Miserables. His Wikipedia page says that he has some projects in the works, but when you click on the citation, it just says that he's been considering getting back to feature film, although there's no way of knowing whether or not anybody would ever want him after this. Either way, it's going to be a while before he gets enough power to reviews like that. But anyway, to close this review, I guess I'll just point out how both the musical and the movie were both just a string of bizarre ideas that also became disasters behind the scenes, but only one worked out. That's because Webber was somehow talented enough to make it inexplicably work against all odds and logic. Meanwhile, Tom Hooper wasn't. Fun fact, while I'm making this video, I've actually been playing the game Stray, a much better cat story. Maybe that impacted my enjoyment of this. Probably not. Also, while making this video, I saw the movie Obsession, which opens with the main character's cat dying. Good riddance, you evil nightmare creature. Only because of this movie.
And nothing of value was lost.
Let's go number 16. Worse than most of the 1.5-star movies here, but still above the open house. This movie has no story at all, and yet it still has a more coherent story than that one.